Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Trinadapi Sunichena Tarariva Sahishnuna Amanina Manadena Kirtaniya Sadahari. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Namaiva Kevalam. Kalo Nastyeva, Nastyeva, Nastyeva Gatiranyata. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this section of Bhagavatam is taking place at the Rajasuya sacrifice of Maharaj Yudhishthira. At that time, Yudhishthira and everybody saw when Krishna killed Shishupal, the Atma, the soul of Shishupal, like a meteor, entered into the body of Krishna. And everyone was astounded to see this. So Yudhishthira addressed Narada and said, "Can you please explain?" So Yudhishthira began to explain the three births of Jai Vijay. And the first was their appearance as Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. And therefore the first part of the 7th canto is the narration of the Nisringa Leela. Then their conversation continued. It would seem, according to the reading, it must have continued some days. And there was a discussion on Varnashram. So one of the chapters, one of the final chapters in this section, Narada is instructing Yudhishthira on what does it mean to be a Grihastha. So this is where we pick up. So Narada Muni is instructing Yudhishthira. So follow along. It was Shekhar who requested that these sheets be printed out. And it is his anniversary. So let's first bless him. Hare Krishna, and Pushpa also. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Maharaj Yudhishthira inquired from Narada Muni, "O my Lord, O great sage, kindly explain how we who are staying at home without knowledge of the goal of life may also easily attain liberation according to the instructions of the Vedas." Narada Muni replied, "My dear king, those who stay at home as householders must act to earn their livelihood. And instead of trying to enjoy the results of their work themselves, they should offer these results to Krishna, Vasudeva." Everybody say that name? Vasudeva. How to satisfy Vasudeva in this life can be perfectly understood through the association of great devotees of the Lord. A Grihastha must associate again and again with saintly persons, and with great respect must hear the nectar of the activities of the Supreme Lord and his incarnations, as these activities are described in Srimad Bhagavatam and other Puranas. Thus, one should gradually become detached from affection for his wife and children, exactly like a man awakening from a dream. While working to earn his livelihood as much as necessary to maintain body and soul together, one who is actually learned should live in human society unattached to family affairs, although externally appearing very much attached. An intelligent man in human society should make his own program of activities very simple. If there are suggestions from his friends, children, parents, brothers, or anyone else, he should externally agree and say, yes, that is all right. But internally, he should be determined not to create a cumbersome life in which the purpose of life will not be fulfilled. One may claim proprietorship to as much wealth as required to maintain body and soul together. But one who desires proprietorship over more than that must be considered a thief and deserves to be punished by the laws of nature. Even if one is a householder rather than a brahmachari, a sannyasi, or a vanaprastha, one should not endeavor very hard for religiosity, economic development, or satisfaction of the senses. Even in householder life, one should be satisfied to maintain body and soul together with whatever is available with minimum endeavor according to place and time by the grace of the Lord. One should not engage oneself in ugra karma. Now this word ugra karma is mentioned in chapter 16 of Bhagavad Gita. That same phrase, ugra karma, meaning very vicious, nasty work. In other words, we can work, as he says here, we can earn money, but the motto, as Prabhupada told us, simple living, high thinking. And one should not engage in that kind of work which is very disastrous, very vicious, cruel. Let's continue. Dogs, fallen persons, and untouchables, including chandalas or dog eaters, should all be maintained with their proper necessities, which should be contributed by the householders. Even one's wife at home, with whom one is most intimately attached, should be offered for the reception of guests and people in general. One so seriously considers one's wife to be his own that he sometimes kills himself for her or kills others, including even his parents or spiritual master or teacher. Therefore, if one can give up attachment to such a wife, he conquers the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is never conquered by anyone. And that name of Krishna is Ajita. Everybody say. Thus, through proper deliberation, one should give up attraction to his wife's body, because that body will ultimately be transformed into small insects, stool, or ashes. What is the value of this insignificant body? How much greater is the Supreme Being who is all-pervading like the sky? So Narada here is reminding us what we learned in Bhagavad Gita in the very beginning, that we are not this body, that we are spirit soul, and that the purpose of human life is self-realization. An intelligent person should be satisfied with eating prasad, food offered to the Lord, or with performing 5 different kinds of yajna, pancha suna. By such activities, one can give up attachment for the body and so-called proprietorship with reference to the body. One is able to do this. He is firmly fixed in the position of a Mahatma. So I did some research. The 5 kinds of yajna or panchasuna, here they are. Number 1, teaching and studying the scriptures. Number 2, tarpana, offering water oblations while standing in a sacred river or lake. Sacrificial offerings in the sacred fire. Now this next one I have no idea, but it says the Bali offering to the Bhutas. I don't know if any of you ever done that, but there's this Bali offering to the Bhutas. And the 5th one, reception of guests. So we're definitely doing 2-3 things tonight. We're definitely teaching and studying the scriptures. You're definitely receiving guests. I think so. And sacrificial offerings, instead of the sacred fire, we'll be offering food to the deity by means of mantra, which is as good. Let's continue. Every day, one should worship the Supreme Being who is situated in everyone's heart. So who is that? That's Paramatma. Who's Paramatma? Krishna, yes. And on this basis, one should separately worship the demigods, saintly persons, ordinary human beings, and living entities, one's forefathers, and oneself. So you don't neglect yourself in Narada's instructions. But first you have to worship the Supreme Lord. In this way, one is able to worship the Supreme Being in the core of everyone's heart. Yes, that is also important. God is just not in my heart. God is in everyone's heart. When one is enriched with wealth and knowledge, which are under his full control, and by means of which he can perform yajna, or please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one must perform sacrifices, offering oblations to the fire, according to the directions of the Shastras. In this way, one should worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now, since this is the age of Kali, the scriptures inform us that all kinds of sacrifice, all kinds of yajna can be completely performed simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. This is one of the meanings of this verse. Hare Nama Eva Kevalam. So you may not be able to do Homa, you may not be able to do so many Vedic rituals. It doesn't matter. In Kali Yuga, everything is fulfilled simply by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Therefore, in the 11th canto, Yagyai Sankirtana Prayaya Yajantihi Sumedasaha. The intelligent person will perform Sankirtan. Sankirtan means complete glorification of God. Either we do that by means of japa, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, or by means of kirtan or bhajan. But that we should understand. Hare Nama Eva Kevalam. Everything can be achieved and accomplished in this Kali Yuga simply by chanting Hare Krishna. This I've been emphasizing for over 40 years. This is the essence of religion in Kali Yuga. Let's continue. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the enjoyer of sacrificial offerings What does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? Bhoktaram yagya tapasang. There's going to be no discrepancy between Bhagavatam and Gita. They are completely in sync. Yet, although his lordship eats the oblations offered in the fire, because when you do a yajna, that fire is the mouth of Vishnu. That's his tongue. And what are we placing in that? Ghee and grains. That is the meaning of that swaha. We're actually feeding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, represented by that sacrificial fire. But listen to what Narada says. My dear king, he, meaning Krishna, is still more satisfied when nice food made of grains and what's that word? That's why I love my wife. She never cooks in oil. She only cooks in ghee and butter. But according to Narada, I have to become detached. There's still time yet. So listen what he's... When nice food made of grains and ghee is offered to him, meaning Krishna, through the mouths of qualified brahmanas. This is not the only time this is mentioned in Bhagavatam. This point is mentioned several times. It's definitely mentioned in the 3rd canto, when Jai and Vijay are cursed by the 4 Kumaras, and when Lord Narayan comes on the scene and says to the 4 Kumaras, "Oh, you are great devotees. If my servants have offended you, maybe I should lop off my own arm." And the 4 Kumaras are like bewildered. Why is Lord Narayan speaking like this? So at that time, Lord Narayan says the same exact thing. He says, I relish more when nice food is offered in ghee, cooked in ghee, and offered through the mouths of qualified Brahmins. And what's higher than a Brahmin? Vaishnava, devotee. All right, let's continue. Therefore, my dear king, first offer prasad unto the Brahmins and the demigods. So prasad means it's offered first to who? Krishna. Then it is offered to the Vaishnavas and the demigods. They also want prasad. After sumptuously feeding them, you may distribute prasad to other living entities according to your own ability. In this way, you will be able to worship all living entities. So here you see why in temples, why in ISKCON, they do that Sunday feast, Priti Bhojan. Here is the scriptural reference. We offer first to the deity, then we invite people to come honor prasadam. By eating prasadam, their sinful reactions are nullified. That's why Prabhupada once said, if you can't do anything, just come and take prasad. That's what I said once. I said, I'm going to start my own movement. No rules, no regulations, eat. I'll become the most popular saint. Swami Narantara. No regulations, just eat, but cooked in and butter. And what's that? Of course, has to be offered. All right, so that's the end of part 1. There's 2 parts. Before we go to part 2, there's a few things that Narada said that I want to emphasize. So let's go back to the beginning. So, first of all, Yudhishthira is presenting himself very meek and humble. Look what he says. Without knowledge of the goal of life. Yudhishthira knows the goal of life. He's an intimate associate of Krishna, but in front of a saintly person like Narada, he's going to present himself meek and humble. That is how you relate to a saintly person, meek and humble. Then, the first point he made, same thing Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita chapter 3. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, you become locked up in bondage. Then, he emphasizes something that Lord Chaitanya emphasizes. Sadhu Sangha, Sadhu Sangha, Sadhu Sangha. Even for 1/11th of a second, even that much association with a saintly person can benefit you immensely. So Narada is also emphasizing, stay in the association of devotees of the Lord. Now, it's the next thing. What does it mean to be in the association of devotees? Here it is. With great respect, hear Krishna Katha. Too often, we're all guilty. Too often, we come to a gathering, we come to the temple, and instead of talking about Krishna Katha, we talk Gramya Katha. But the thing is, we're only cheating ourselves. The whole purpose of associating with devotees is to hear and chant the activities of the Supreme Lord. What does Krishna say in Bhagavad Gita? Janma karma chame divyam. My birth and activities are transcendental. They're divine. This is why we discuss them. They're purifying. So when we talk about Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, we are purifying our existence. And Narada is pointing out, along with that automatically comes detachment. The two main things that result from bhakti, vidya, vairagya, knowledge and detachment, both have to be there. Real knowledge automatically means I'm becoming detached from material life, material sense gratification. Now notice this nice phrase, exactly like a man awakening from a dream. I have gone through the Bhagavatam and I have found so many verses which repeatedly the message is the same. Material existence is a dream. And one of those statements says, here is the secret teaching of the Vedas. Material existence is a dream. This should be remembered. It is just like a dream that you have at night. Material existence, our material existence, is also a dream. That is why we have that song, Jeev Jago, Jeev Jago. That word Jeev Jago means wake up out of the dream of material existence and come to the spiritual life. In the Vedas, Tamasima Jyotir Gama, same thing. Come out of the darkness of material existence, go to the light of the Vedic knowledge. So the more we can wake up from the dream-like state of material existence, the more we can enter into the transcendental realm. The next point Narada was making, it's very similar to what is mentioned in the Isha Upanishad, that everybody has a particular material quota. You're allotted so much material happiness, and a Brahmana is one who learns to be satisfied with that quota. For instance, the story of Sudama Brahmana. His quota in his life was that he was destitute. But Sudama, when he was destitute, he was happy. He was Krishna conscious. After he got benedicted by Krishna in Dwaraka and he got opulence, he didn't become a different person. He was the same Sudama, humble and surrendered to Krishna. So each of us, we all have a different material quota which we have earned from our previous karma. You're allowed to enjoy that. But the idea, once you come to Krishna consciousness, learn to be satisfied with your lot in life, and then in the spare time, pursue Krishna consciousness. We don't negate material life, but we learn to be satisfied. That's a Brahmana. A Brahmana is one who is satisfied in any condition. My wife and I, when we started out, we had a little one room, what was that thing? Box trailer. That was it. Simple box trailer. We did our devotional service. Were you happy? Okay. Now we have a 2-bedroom apartment. Are you happy? Almost? Okay. If Krishna is pleased, it'll come. But if you don't get it, you won't be happy? Thank you. But you look pretty happy right now. Okay. That is a Brahmana. This situation, that situation, you learn how to adjust. You learn how to make do. Okay, now this next thing that Narada points out. A householder is a great diplomat. People are coming, you should do this, you should do this. Yes, 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 yes. But inside, I'm thinking, I'm not going to let these people get me entangled. I know what is my real business. My real business is to achieve self-realization, to achieve liberation. These people want to pull me more and more into material society, friendship, and so-called love. No, 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 no. I'm not going to get entangled. No more entanglement. So then he says, one may claim as proprietorship as much wealth as required to maintain body and soul together. Okay? Then he points out, yes, you have to work in this material world. We're householders. We have to work, but just work nicely, but no vicious, cruel, or another word that's used, over-endeavor. Sometimes people, in order to achieve material success, they over-endeavor, working 16, 18, 20 hours. No. Work so many hours a day, then balance time, spiritual life. Nice balance. Then the householder maintains not just himself, but others. Then we were advised how the householder has to become detached from that sense gratification that the wife provides in so many ways. All right, so let's now go to part number 2. Everybody chant the Maha Mantra. So this next section is from the same chapter. I didn't include everything because there were some things that were not appropriate for the time, place, and circumstance. Sri Narada said to Maharaj Yudhishthira, O king of the earth, because this whole Rajasuya sacrifice is when Yudhishthira claimed that he was now emperor. This is before the battle of Kurukshetra. They have not been banished to the forest yet. This is before that. So, in order for Yudhishthira to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice, one demon had to be killed. And that demon was Jarasandha, because that's what Uddhava advised. When Krishna was in Dwaraka, a representative from imprisoned kings, Jarasandha, had imprisoned some kings, and they were going to be offered to Lord Shiva in a sacrifice. You can see what kind of mentality is Jarasandha. He was going to make some offering of these kings as a sacrifice. So a representative from those kings came to see Krishna in Dwaraka and asked for deliverance. But at the same time, Narada had come to see Krishna in Dwaraka and told him that Yudhishthira wanted to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice and claim emperorship of the world. So how are two things going to happen at the same time? So Krishna then turned to Uddhava, because Uddhava was somebody very intelligent. He's the disciple of Grihastha. So from time to time, Krishna would take service from Uddhava and ask him for his sage advice, his counsel. So Uddhava said, first of all, as long as Jarasandha is living, Yudhishthira can't perform the Rajasuya sacrifice. First, Jarasandha either has to submit, because that's what it means. All the other kings have to agree, yes, I acknowledge Yudhishthira as emperor. If not, fight. So Uddhava said, first you have to take care of Jarasandha, then you can do the Rajasuya sacrifice. So Krishna, Bhima, and I think Arjuna. Huh? Yes, I was right. So the three of them went to see Jarasandha, and they disguised themselves as Brahmanas. And Jarasandha was known as very charitable with Brahmanas. But when he saw these Brahmanas, he said, these are very funny looking Brahmanas. They have big, big arms, and they have markings as if they shoot bows and arrows. So Jarasandha said, all right, you want charity, what do you want? So Krishna then revealed, we want you to fight. We have come to challenge you. And then Krishna said, here is Arjuna, here is Bhima, and here's your old enemy, Krishna, who Jarasandha had fought 18 times. 17 times, Krishna wiped out his army and let Jarasandha, with his tail wagging, back to his kingdom. 17 times Jarasandha gathered an army. On the 18th time, it appeared that Krishna left the battlefield. Therefore, his name, Ranchorji. Everybody say. But he didn't flee the battle. He had better things to do. He had business with Rukmini. He knew, Rukmini is going to come and contact me very soon. Jarasandha, some other day. So Jarasandha thought he had killed Krishna. Krishna and Balaram went to the top of a mountain, and Jarasandha lit fires. And so he burned the mountain. So Jarasandha thought, I have finally killed Krishna. But what actually happened, Krishna and Balaram jumped off the mountain 80 some odd miles down to earth and escaped. Balaram went to go marry his wife. I think it's in Mithila. And then Krishna went and subsequently kidnapped Rukmini. But Jarasandha thought he had killed. Now when Krishna appears, it's like, actually he saw Krishna again at Rukmini's wedding. Jarasandha was there when Krishna kidnapped Rukmini. So he saw him before then. Because when Shishupal was supposed to marry Rukmini, Krishna came and kidnapped her. Jarasandha was there. But Krishna now reveals himself and I'm your old eternal enemy, Krishna. So Jarasandha told Krishna, well, I'm not going to fight you because you're a coward, forgetting the 17 times that Krishna defeated him. So he said, I'm not going to fight you, Krishna. And Arjuna, you're younger than me, but Bhima, you're let's fight. And that fight went on for 28 days. Finally, Krishna gave him the clue, because Jarasandha was born in 2 separate parts, and he was put together by a witch. Therefore, he was called Jarasandha. Her name was Jara. So Krishna knew the mysterious birth of Jarasandha. So Krishna told Bhima, this is how you kill him. You have to split him in 2. So on that final 28th day, Bhima did his thing, and he bifurcated Jarasandha right down the middle, straight down. And now they returned to Yudhishthira. Now he can do the Rajasuya sacrifice. All right. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. It has been decided by expert learned scholars that only the Supreme Personality of Godhead, what's his name? Krishna, in whom all that is moving or non-moving within this universe is resting, and from whom everything is coming, is the best person to whom everything must be given. So this is the definition of absolute truth. Everything's coming from Krishna. Everything rests on Krishna. And Krishna himself has no origin. That's the definition of the absolute truth. Everything comes from him, enters, and rests on him. Now, as it says here, the best person to whom everything must given. At the Rajasuya sacrifice, there was a certain part called the Agra Puja, who was to be worshipped first in this assembly. So one of the Pandavas, Sahadev, stood up and he said, I'm sure all of you, because at the Rajasuya sacrifice, the demigods were there. Brahma, Shiva, Indra, the demigods were there. All the great kings, and there were also saintly persons and rishis at this Rajasuya sacrifice. So Sahadev stood up and says, you all will agree with me that the best person who first should be worshipped is sitting right here. His name is Krishna. And everybody said, very good, except for one rascal, Shishupal. He couldn't stand that Krishna? Because Shishupal from his birth hated Krishna. Even though they were related, he hated Krishna. So he spoke very blasphemous to Krishna. And there was going to be a big fight. So Krishna took out his Sudarshan Chakra, cut off the head of Shishupal, and like I said, the Atma of Shishupal entered into Krishna's body. Okay, let's continue. O King Yudhishthira, the demigods, many great sages and saints, including even the 4 sons of Lord Brahma. Who are they? Those are the 4 Kumaras. And I myself were present at your Rajasuya sacrificial ceremony. So this conversation must have taken place afterwards, based on what he's saying here. But when there was a question of who should be the first person worshipped, everyone decided upon Lord Krishna, the Supreme Person. The entire universe, which is full of living entity, is like a tree whose root is the Supreme Personality of God. Everybody say? Achyuta. Everybody. Achyuta means Krishna never falls. He never fails. Therefore, simply by worshiping Krishna, one can worship all living entities. This is a fundamental principle of bhakti. Narada elsewhere says, how do you properly water a tree? You water the root. How do you properly nourish the senses? You put food in the mouth, not the ear. Right? You put the food in the mouth, it goes to the stomach, then everybody benefits. You water the root of the tree, then the tree gets nourished. I learned that from my father at the age of 7 years old. My father, as his hobby, had a nursery. And every Saturday I'd have to go and water the plants and pull the weeds. And I hated it. I wanted to go play baseball. But my father said, no, Nicky, you come with me. And I go, oh, man. And I'd have to go, and my father would say, and when you pull the weeds, you have to get your fingers dirty and pull them out by the roots. So my fingers would get all black and get hurt, because you have to go deep and pull out the root. I hated it, because their tendency is pull the top. But if you pull the top, the root is still there, they're going to grow back. So my father was constantly, pull, Nicky, pull by the roots. And then you'd have the hose, and he said, you water the root. So there's my guru, my father. Pulling the weeds, also there in Lord Chaitanya's philosophy. You pull out the weeds of sinful desires by the root. And like when you water tulsi, how do you water tulsi? At the base, by the root. So my father was teaching me Vedic knowledge, but he didn't know, I didn't know. But later it was revealed. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has created many residential places, like the bodies of human beings, animals, birds, saints, and demigods. In all of these innumerable bodily forms, the Lord resides with the living entity as Param Atma. They're not the same. They're two distinct individuals. This is also mentioned in chapter 13 of Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna says, Arjuna, the difference between me and you know what's happening in your body, but I know what's happening in everybody's body. That is why we're not God. I don't know what's going on in your mind, or in your mind, or your mind. It looks like Shaker is happy with me. He's smiling, but sometimes it can be deceiving. Not in your case, but right? Sometimes people will come with a smile, but behind their back they've got a dagger. Right? Meaning, to your face, they say, oh no, very good, but behind your back, tuck, 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 talking. You've all had experience. So, I know you know what's happening in your body, but Krishna says, I know what's going on in everybody's body. The Lord resides within the living being as Paramatma. Thus he is known as the Purusha Avatar, because that super soul is an expansion of Shirodakashayi Vishnu. O King Yudhishthira. Now this is an explanation of what we learn in Bhagavad Gita, this next part. O King Yudhishthira, the super soul in every body gives intelligence to the individual soul according to his capacity for understanding. Therefore, the super soul is the chief within the body. Bhagavad Gita, Sarvasya Chaham Hridi Sanivishta Mata Smritir Jnanam Apohanam. Krishna very clearly says, I'm causing remembrance, knowledge, forgetfulness. But here, Narada gives us some deeper understanding. Super soul is doing this according to our capacity for understanding. So then the next question comes, how can I increase my capacity for understanding? The answer, become free from sinful life, and perform spiritual activities. You do those two things, your capacity for understanding will increase. One of my favorite mantras from the Upanishads. Yasya devi para bhaktir yata deve tata gurau tasyaite kathita hi artha prakashante mahatmanaha. One who has implicit faith in Krishna and equal faith in his spiritual master, all the meaning of the Vedic literatures is automatically revealed. So you may be not very intelligent, doesn't matter. If you have firm faith in Krishna and your spiritual master, when you read the Vedic literatures, you will have proper understanding. It's revealed to you. The supersoul is manifested to the individual soul according to the individual's comparative development of knowledge, austerity, penance, and so on. So here's what you do. Knowledge. How do you get knowledge? You read the Vedic scriptures. That's how you get the knowledge. You perform austerity and penance, such as Ekadasi. Janmastami, you fast on Janmastami. And so many different things. Knowledge, austerity, and penance. In the second canto, when Lord Narayan appears to Lord Brahma at the dawn of creation, Lord Brahma wants the ability to create, but he needs to be empowered by Narayan. Narayan tells him, the potential power, tapa. Everything comes from tapa, from penance and austerities. That's where everything comes. Next question. What's the best tapa? That's right. I'm not making it up. It's exactly stated in the scriptures. This is the hardest thing to do. I see many people with big muscles, but they can't lift a little pair of japa beads. Here is the hardest thing to do every day. Here is the supreme tapa. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. I have a good friend. I'm not going to mention the person's name. I don't want to embarrass the person. But I have a good friend, and recently he confided, Prabhuji, all my advancement has come because I make sure I chant my japa every day. And that's also my realization. Because we do this japa, I have a happy marriage. Are you happy? Thank you. I'll take whatever I can get. Yes, Harinama Eva Kevalam. My dear king, okay, now this one is going to hit like a boxer. Look carefully. My dear king, when great sages and saintly persons saw mutually disrespectful dealings at the beginning of Treta Yuga, deity worship in the temple was introduced with all paraphernalia. So this answers a lot of questions. Some people ask, where does this deity worship come from? Here it is. It's not man-made. Krishna himself in the 11th canto directly says, yes, you should do this deity worship. And it started in Treta Yuga because in Satya Yuga, there was no envy. Everybody was pretty much on the spiritual platform. Everybody did meditation on Krishna in the heart. Because of Satya Yuga, the mode of goodness was all prominent. There was no strife. Treta Yuga, this is when materialism begins. Kali Yuga, mostly materialism. Spiritualism, very meager. But materialism, rampant everywhere you go. You just got to look. Materialism. So, mutually disrespectful dealings. We've all experienced it. We're experiencing it right now. I don't have to tell you. Mutually disrespectful dealings. So, solution, worship the deity. Narada is going to continue to explain. Sometimes a neophyte devotee, neophyte means beginner, offers all the paraphernalia for worshiping the Lord, and he factually worships the Lord as the deity. But because he is envious of the authorized devotees of Lord Vishnu, the Lord is never satisfied with his devotional service. That's why in the second verse of Bhagavatam, the second verse out of 18,000, Paramo nirmatsaranam satam. You want to advance, you have to become free from jealousy and envy. And this is stated throughout Bhagavatam. It's repeated. Get free from jealousy and envy. What does Lord Chaitanya say? Remain meek and humble. If you're meek and humble, you're not going to be jealous or envious of anyone. So, this is the key. You cannot be envious. My dear king, of all persons, a qualified brahmana must be accepted at the best within this material world. Such a Brahmin, by practicing austerity, Vedic studies, and satisfaction, becomes the counterpart of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Now this next verse. My dear King Yudhishthira, the Brahmins, especially those engaged in preaching the glories of the Lord throughout the entire world, are recognized and worshipped by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the heart and soul of all creation. This is why in ISKCON we put so much emphasis on Srila Prabhupada. Did he not preach the glories of the world, of the Lord, throughout the entire world? He came to America in 1965. Then he went to Canada. Then he went back to India. And by the time Prabhupada had left in 1977, he circled the globe, I think, 12 times. He went to various countries, opened 108 temples, published so many books. Prabhupada is what Yudhishthira is describing. Prabhupada is that kind of Brahmin engaged in preaching the glories of the Lord. This is why we worship Srila Prabhupada in ISKCON, because we understand this point. The Brahmanas, by their preaching, sanctify the three worlds with the dust of their lotus feet, and thus they are worshipable even for Krishna. Narada Muni, he concludes. Everybody chant the Maha Mantra.